Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of ICA Pune Center, I would like to welcome one and all for this webinar on biocementation. We have with us Dr. Madhuvanti Latkar from VNIT Nagpur. Before that, I would request Jayant Khode sir, who is treasurer ICA Pune Center, for his opening remarks. Over to you, Jayant sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Myself Jayant Khode, and on behalf of ICI Pune Center, I welcome you all. ICI Pune Center is a center who is conducting SEMCON on a yearly basis, and this year is going to be conducted on second week of December. And this time the subject is of this webinar or seminar is on precast building. So I will request you all participants to please register for this webinar and get benefit and get a knowledge of precast buildings. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayant sir. I would request Madhuvanti ma'am, can you switch on your camera once? Ma'am, request to switch on your camera. Ma'am, you're on mute. Madhuvanti ma'am. Ma'am. Madhuvanti ma'am.
Suchita madam, you can call her on her mobile because I think so she is on mute.
Yes, I'll check first. Yes, Madhuvanti ma'am. We are not able to hear you, ma'am.
Okay. Can you hear me? Hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I'm not able to unmute myself once again. So I was just typing a message over there, but then now I succeeded in unmuting myself. So I think my video is also on now, and am I clearly audible?
You're clearly audible.
Your video is not on.
Your video
no, it's on. I can see it in my window. Video is on.
Yeah, you can just try once to close it and then just click again.
Because it is seen in my window. Okay, once again I'll do it. On my screen, the video was showing on. Once again, I have done it.
Okay, it might be you are facing the network issue. That might be the reason.
It will take some time, I think. Once again, because I did it, switched it off and on.
Okay.
Just let's wait for a minute or so.
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
She knows how to share the screen.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Just ask her to click that arrow in between.
So no, I know how to share the screen. That's not an issue. But now why the video is not getting on?
Ma'am, it is not an issue. Your presentation is on. Everything will be sorted out.
See, on my screen, my video is on. I can see myself on my screen.
Many times it happens, ma'am. Not a problem.
It's okay, ma'am. Before
start sharing your screen.
Before
should I share image? Should I share the screen immediately?
Ma'am, please wait just a moment. Let me introduce you to the audience. So we have with us Dr. Madhuvanti Latkar, who has done PhD in environmental biotechnology. She is currently Associate Professor in Department of Civil Engineering in Visvesvaraya National Institute of Technology, Nagpur. And she has almost 3 decades of experience in teaching as well as research. Her areas of research are mostly into environmental biotechnology. She has almost 21 journal publications as well as 12 conference publications. Ma'am has been granted 4 patents which are in the domain of biocementation. The recent one everyone must be aware of. It is about the use of watermelon seeds in cement. So we'll have more discussion on other things of biocementation. And her other areas of interest are environmental biotechnology, environmental chemistry, and environmental microbiology. So, ma'am, everyone is eager to listen to you and know more about your work and practical aspects of it. So over to you, ma'am. You can start sharing your screen, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Sucheta. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. A very good afternoon to you all.
Yes, ma'am.
It's my pleasure today to talk to you all on this platform. Is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Is the screen visible and am I clearly audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely correct. Everything is all right. Thank you.
That's great. So I'll now proceed. See, I will be talking today on this topic, biocementation, an eco-friendly technique for structural amelioration of cementitious materials. Now, these are the topics which I will be talking about. Introduction, in which need of eco-friendly technique, why it is needed. I will discuss that. Then I will talk about biomineralization, and biocementation is a type of is nothing but biomineralization. I will explain that. Then we will just see various pathways of biocementation, amongst which urea hydrolysis is the most commonly used one, I mean researched one, especially for the amelioration of mechanical strength of cementitious materials as well as soil, etc. So why it is so, that I will discuss. Then we will see annals of progress in MICCP, that is microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation, nothing but biocementation. Then I will just talk about soil, Mother Earth. I should salute first to the Mother Earth and soil, how it has blessed us and how it is a blessing for biocementation. And finally, I will present a case study in front of you. And after discussing conclusions of the case study, I think the house will be open for interaction, and I'll be very happy if I get good questions and if we have a very good healthy discussion. So let me proceed. I'll request one and all to please message or say something if I am not audible, or if the voice is cracking, or if you cannot see the contents of the screen, I mean my presentation. So please let me know about that.
Sure, ma'am.
Coming to introduction. Yeah, coming to introduction. As we know, shelter is one of the human's basic needs, and hence construction field has supreme importance in the society. With the increasing urbanization, significance of the construction industry has become more pronounced in recent years. With the change and shifts in centuries, the lifestyle of people also has changed. And in an attempt to acquire a better quality of life, there is increasing demand of high-tech industries, or rather high-tech, not industries, high-tech infrastructure. So development is at a very, very high stride. Haphazard increasing population has also resulted in an enormous increase in construction demands. Chemical and non-biodegradable additives are overconsumed to strengthen and to protect these constructions, as durability and enhancement of mechanical properties of construction materials has always been a prime area of concern. Now, generally, several organic and inorganic chemical admixtures are used to improve the properties of construction materials. You all know this. And of course, also to protect them. These include various types of surface coatings, water repellents, then pore blockers, and various chemical admixtures. But now, one of the common problems that occurs in concrete structures, that also we know that it is crack formation caused by overstressing, maybe by improper construction practices, aggressive environmental exposure, shrinkage in concrete, so on and so forth. And wide range of structural epoxy and synthetic filler agents are used for crack remediation. But you know, most of these admixtures, pore blockers, this epoxy and synthetic filler agents, most of them have some degree of toxicity. And even though all these admixtures used for strength enhancement as well as crack remediation of structures serve the purpose, they are generally associated with substantial amount of energy for their production. Moreover, the chemicals generated in the manufacturing processes of these admixtures may have environment harming properties due to their non-biodegradability. And thus, These conventional techniques used for making the structures durable and for increasing their strength have many drawbacks, such as more cost, need of constant maintenance, degradation over a period of time, and of course, environmental pollution. And hence their use is highly discouraged. Thus, there is a need to seek an environment-friendly, cost-effective, long-term and efficient technique to improve the mechanical properties of cementitious materials, to make the structures more durable, and for crack healing of structures. And in this regard, biocementation or microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation, that is MICCP, has gained the attention of many researchers in recent years. The application of biomimicry and biotechnology in civil engineering has many advantages in terms of achieving sustainability and decreasing carbon footprint. Construction microbial biotechnology is an area of science and engineering that includes microbially mediated construction processes. Exponential development in construction biotechnology has been observed during last few years owing to the concerns to achieve sustainability goals. Many researchers have succeeded in enhancing the mechanical strength of cementitious materials and also crack remediation by application of biocementation. It has the potential to replace harmful chemical treatments. So with this introduction, I now proceed to talk about biomineralization, which is the main heart of my today's talk or speech. So what is biomineralization? It is one of the most promising solutions to tackle the drawbacks of the conventional methods for increasing durability and for healing cracks of structures. So what is it? It is a process by which biomineralization is a process by which living organisms produce minerals, that is various inorganic compounds, and this process may be intracellular biomineralization or it may be extracellular one. Coming to intracellular biomineralization process. As the name suggests, this occurs within the cells of organisms. This occurs within the cells of living organisms and is also known as biologically controlled mineralization. The involved cells of organisms have significant control over the deposition of minerals. And the examples are formation of teeth and bones in mammals. What is extracellular biomineralization process? In this type of mineralization, there is a process which occurs usually outside the cell. The reactions, that is this mineralization reactions, they occur usually outside the cells due to the reaction of certain metabolic products secreted by the involved cells, involved living cells, with the compounds or ions present in the outside environment. Outside means outside the cells. Hence extracellular. And in this case, the involved cells have limited or no control on the mineralization process. It is also called as biologically induced mineralization, and mineralization which occurs in the process of biocementation falls under this category. Now let's see what is the basic concept of biocementation. So as we have seen in the last slide, it is basically extracellular biomineralization. So let's move further. There are microvoids. There are microvoids within the matrices of cementitious materials that cannot be filled even with the application of mechanical vibrators. Yes, at the microscopic level, there are many voids or pores in the matrices of cementitious materials. Now, if these voids are filled, cementitious materials would perform even better in terms of strength and durability. And filling these voids by using the phenomenon of extracellular biomineralization is known as biocementation. Now see, here we are doing nothing but we are mimicking the nature. In nature, some microorganisms have the ability to deposit calcium carbonate as a part of their metabolism, and that is what is known as biocementation. We call it biocementation or microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation. Now see, these depositions can prove to be a promising binder for the protection and consolidation of construction materials. MICCP is basically, that is microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation, is basically a natural process and has shaped the earth ever since its creation. It involves production of carbonate ions as a part of metabolism of microorganisms, especially bacteria, sometimes some fungi also. And then these carbonate ions are converted into calcium carbonate when placed in the environment of calcium ions. This is the basic concept behind biocementation. So now filling these voids in the cementitious materials by this mineral, that is calcium carbonate, which is produced by various metabolic reactions of microorganisms, is the basic concept. Now biocementation here I have depicted in this picture. Left, if we consider the cube as any mortar or cement or concrete cube, you can see the voids in that. If it is subjected to biomineralization, that is extracellular one, or biocementation, then you can see in the right figure, the figure on the right hand side of the arrow, the biologically induced minerals, that is calcium carbonate, they have been deposited and the pores have been blocked or they have been filled up. Now, in this regard, generally till very recently, only MICCP, that is microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation, this term was used, wherein the source of enzyme is microorganisms, especially bacteria. Now, enzyme, one new word I'm talking about here, because I know that I think all of you, all my audience today must be civil engineers or structural engineers, and I don't think anybody from biology side is here. So I think I should explain what is an enzyme. An enzyme is a biological catalyst. That is, it is a biological, or rather it is an organic compound which is produced by living organisms, and all the biochemical reactions, they require presence of an enzyme. So every biochemical reaction requires presence of an enzyme, and an enzyme is reaction specific or substrate specific. So it is nothing but biological catalyst. Now here in MICCP, we are using nothing but an enzyme which has been created, which has been produced by the microorganism. So the source of enzyme is microorganisms, especially bacteria when we say MICCP, whereas a new term EICCP has been recently introduced in this context. That is enzyme-induced calcium carbonate precipitation, wherein source of enzyme is plants and not bacteria. You know, because researchers have realized over a period of time when tried to apply the laboratory generated data or laboratory generated procedures on field, and they have realized that it is a bit impracticable to use bacteria on field for this technology. So researchers have searched for other biological materials for this enzyme as a source of this enzyme, and they have realized that when many plants contain this enzyme urease. And so EICCP, that is enzyme-induced calcium carbonate precipitation, when plants are used as a source of urease, so it is more appropriate to call it as EICCP rather than MICCP, because here microorganisms are not involved and the process becomes a little bit more practicable. Many researchers have extracted plant urease and used it for EICCP. They have extracted it from mainly seeds of plants. In majority of cases, extracting urease from plants is a simple process. Now let me tell here about my own, I mean rather not my research, I should not say that, my team's research, in which we have used some 3-4 types of seeds, seeds from 3-4 types of plants which contain urease, and we have succeeded in getting good results in terms of amelioration of strength of mechanical strength of concrete or mortar, and also in terms of crack healing of concrete cubes in the laboratory, of course. And from that, especially watermelon seeds, we focused on most because watermelon seeds, there are some type of watermelon seeds which are, you can say, low quality, which are not used by people as a food, and they are sometimes used as fodder or generally thrown away. And then secondly, they are not very costly and easily available. A number of watermelon seeds are easily available. So we focused on watermelon seeds and we got very good results. And now the results are, I have started the process of technology transfer, and first field applicability will be tested. So after the on-field application is successful, which I am very hopeful that it should be successful, because I don't see any major reason why it should not, then I will do the proper technology transfer. Anyways, coming back to our topic of biocementation, now MICCP and EICCP are the two terms which are used, but we will today focus on MICCP because I'm going to present a case study in front of you about MICCP. Though I told you that even EICCP we have worked with, and we have worked with watermelon seeds. So coming to microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation or biocementation. Calcium carbonate is most abundantly occurring natural compound that has excellent healing power. It has involvement in healing of fractured bones. Microbially induced calcium carbonate plays an important role. Microbially induced means the calcium carbonate which is produced by microorganisms, especially bacteria. Some researchers have also worked with fungi, but in very rare cases I have seen in literature. Mainly bacteria people have worked with. Even I have worked, me and my team have worked for last 4 years. We are pursuing research in biocementation since I think 2015 or late 2014. And we have worked with bacteria, and I will present a case study that time. I will explain further. So it plays an important role in imparting structural stability to natural structures like ant hills and coral reefs. You know corals. What are corals? They are the aquatic organisms which are present especially in oceans, and they have a colony-like structure which are known as coral reefs. It is very tough skeletal structure in which they inside which they live. So these coral reefs are they are made of calcium carbonate, and of course corals only manufacture these reefs. So it's naturally also the organisms are doing this. Researchers have tried to mimic this natural process of the betterment of cementitious materials. So we are doing nothing, but we are just doing whatever nature has taught to us. If we, carefully look into nature, and if we listen to what nature is telling us, we can gain many things. That is my own experience, which I am telling you. First rule we should follow is we should not go against nature, do anything which harms nature, but we have already done that. So now we are after searching solutions. So again, for solutions also, our Mother Earth, our nature is a big-hearted, entity, and it is only going to give us the solutions for all the harm which we have made to our Mother Earth. So now, there are various pathways of MICCP or microbially induced calcium carbonate precipitation or biocementation. These are the pathways which I have listed here. As you can see, calcifying microbes, then there are different pathways. The pathway first listed here is photosynthesis, which is carried out by photosynthetic organisms, mainly cyanobacteria and algae. And in these, through this reaction, calcium carbonate is produced. Then sulfate reduction carried out by sulfate reducing bacteria. Here also calcium carbonate is one of the products. I'm going hurriedly through this because we will be focusing on urea hydrolysis only. Then denitrification, which is undertaken by nitrate reducing bacteria, and in these two reactions calcium carbonate is finally produced. Then methane oxidation, which is carried out by methanotrophs, which are type of bacteria only, and again in this process calcium carbonate is produced. And finally urea hydrolysis, which is carried out by ureolytic bacteria, and in this urea CONH2 twice is hydrolyzed, and by that way carbonate is produced, and then if calcium is present in the medium, then calcium carbonate is produced. Now coming to urea hydrolysis. Why urea hydrolysis is preferred? Because urea hydrolysis is the simplest and easily controllable carbonate producing reaction as compared to other mechanisms. Also, ureolytic bacteria are very commonly found in nature. Now, what is meant by ureolytic bacteria? That means the bacteria which hydrolyze urea. And they hydrolyze urea by using which enzyme? They produce enzyme urease. So this enzyme urease is the main focus, is the main game player in our whole game of biocementation. Enzyme urease and the substrate, that is urea. So urea hydrolysis requires a shorter duration. Amongst all these pathways, urea hydrolysis is the most common one. It is simplest, easily controllable. Ureolytic bacteria are very commonly found in nature. Urea hydrolysis requires a shorter duration and produces a large amount of calcium carbonate precipitation. Because we need a large amount of CaCO3, because as you can also imagine that there are many microvoids in the matrix of the cementitious material, in the matrices of the cementitious material. So we need a large amount of calcium carbonate to be produced. The advantage of metabolic activities of different ureolytic bacteria is taken to successfully run MICCP reactions in ureohydrolysis. So here I'm just showing you in short how this process occurs. Now here in the bottom I have listed the reactions which are occurring when we subject the biocement. I mean when we are applying biocementation. See, it involves many biochemical reactions. Now initially, as you can see in the first reaction, this is urea, CONH2 twice. In the presence of urease enzyme, urea gets hydrolyzed, that is reacted with water to form, this is known as carbamate, to form carbamate and ammonia. Now 1 mole of carbonic acid and ammonia, 1 mole of carbonic acid and ammonia, each are formed due to hydrolysis of carbonate in the next reaction, due to hydrolysis of carbamate in the next reaction, that is here. Now these products, subsequently form 1 mole of bicarbonate and 2 moles of ammonium and hydroxyl ions respectively, as you can see in the third and fourth reaction here. Here carbonate ion is formed and here ammonium ion is formed. And hydroxyl ions are also formed. Due to these reactions, pH is increased and bicarbonate equilibrium is shifted and carbonate ions are finally formed, as you can see here in the last reaction, rather the fifth reaction. Now see, what happens is that generally the bacterial cell wall is, generally I am saying, it's not a rule, but generally it is negatively charged. And so the bacteria attract cations, that is positively charged ions from the medium in which they are or from the environment. Now calcium, that is Ca ions, calcium ions have 2 positive charges, Ca plus 2 ions, they are cations. So the bacteria attract calcium ions from the environment, which thus gets deposited on the cell surface. So now if in this process, if we supply here some calcium source, some chemical compound which can produce calcium ions, then the calcium ions are attracted by the bacteria and they get deposited on the cell surface, bacterial cell surface. Now subsequently what happens is that the calcium ions here, calcium plus cell, that is bacterial cell calcium complex is formed. Then the calcium ions subsequently react with the carbonate ions produced here. And CaCO3, calcium carbonate compound is formed. Now this calcium carbonate is not water soluble, so it gets precipitated. So the calcium carbonate precipitation is formed at the cell surface, and thus the bacterial cell acts as a site of nucleation. So here you can see that in this pores of the microvoids of the say this is a concrete cube, then in these microvoids of this cube the bacteria are getting there and they are blocking or getting deposited in these pores along with the calcium carbonate. Basically it is calcium carbonate. Number of calcium carbonate molecules are being attached to these bacterial cell walls. Now here one query, before I get that query in question answer session, I will make this clear here itself at this juncture, that so now here you understand that the bacteria are getting inside the microvoids and along with the calcium carbonate and they are getting deposited, and thus this is increasing the mechanical strength of the cementitious material. So the first question in your mind will be, oh, that means there will be bacteria in the concrete or the mortar which is being used in the construction of my house or my office or any building which I am living in or which I am visiting. Then I don't want that to happen. Natural reaction of every human being. But you know, the big answer to this is no. There won't be any live bacteria. We have done an experiment, or rather not an experiment, multiple experiments in our research lab for this. And we have concluded that the bacteria are alive only for at the most 6 days, 5 or 6 days, once they are introduced in the cementitious materials. Actually, what we do is that at the time when we cast the concrete or mortar, that time only we replace water by this biocementing solution. So from the time of, 0 day of cast till say 5th day or 6th day of curing, the bacteria are alive there. After that, the bacteria are dead. This we have proved, and even our article regarding this, a paper, journal paper has been published in one SCI journal. You can visit my, you can see my Google Scholar link profile, Google Scholar profile. There you can find all my publications. In that one publication, we have presented this data as well. So this query is now over. Now the next question, somebody may ask that if the bacteria are dead, then why you are, we can claim that, because till the 28th day of curing, the entire whatever mechanical strength is gained of the concrete and mortar, and that is the truth. That is what I feel. I am not a civil engineer. If I am wrong, please correct me. But that is what I, because before starting my work on biocementation, I studied something about concrete mortar, and so this is what a basic thing which I gained. Sometimes it is, in case of, if it is OPPC, then it may be 90 days. I am talking about OPC. So the question will be, the question which I may get, that then how the reactions are happening, then why till the 28th day of curing we are seeing the results and all those things? Why wait for 28th day? The answer to this is that though bacteria are dead, but the biocementing reactions are not stopped. They are happening. Why? Because that is known as the post-survival enzymatic reactions. As we have seen in the previous slide, that biocementation is extracellular biomineralization. So that means what? The enzyme urease has already been secreted by the bacteria outside their cells. So now even if the bacteria are dead, we have nothing to, or rather biocementation is not going to affect. We have nothing to do with it. And till the enzyme is active, the reactions are going to occur. And we have observed that generally the reactions occur till 28th day. We get the increase, augmentation of mechanical strength and reduction in water absorption. We have even seen the results for 45 and then 90 days, and we have observed that then there is, after that, there is a very little bit difference in the increase in compressive strength and reduction in water absorption. So with this background, I'll proceed further. Sucheta madam, hello, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I think I will need some more time than 45 minutes.
No
issues,
I
am talking hurriedly. Will it be okay?
Yes, absolutely okay, ma'am. You can continue.
So now let's see annals in progress in MICCP. See, in 1999 and earlier, the concept of biomineralization was known. Then in the block of 2000 to 2005, application of MICCP in medical science, especially in the areas of teeth and bone, it was prevalent. Then in 2005 to 2010, application of MICCP for soil improvement was researched. Then in the 2 years 2010 to 2012, application of MICCP for improvement of cement-based materials was studied vigorously. And then since 2012 to present time, there is a hunt for better ingredients. Now, this is what is the loophole, or you can say the not loophole, the bottleneck of this process. Hunt of better ingredient means what? Now that I will explain further. That is what is nutrients for ureolytic bacteria. Now see, as we all need food for survival, for growth, bacteria are also living organisms. They too need food and they too need nutrients. So vitamins, proteins are the two major nutrients required by bacteria, and for ureolytic bacteria, carbon is also needed to be provided externally. So vitamins, proteins and carbon are some of the important nutrients and minerals required for the growth of ureolytic bacteria. Conventionally, these bacterial strains are grown and maintained in laboratories by using standard nutrient media, which contain all the required nutrients, such as nutrient broth is the standard nutrient medium, which is a liquid medium, and nutrient agar, which is a solid medium. And as a carbon source, conventionally D-glucose is used. However, these nutrient media are usually associated with a high cost. You know, the vitamin source which is used in this nutrient conventional nutrient media is meat extract, which is very costly. Then the protein source which is used conventionally is peptone, which is also very costly. So, you know, they are associated with a very high cost, which makes the entire process of MICCP expensive. Many researchers have been making efforts to make the process of MICCP cost effective and sustainable. Waste products of various industries such as lactose mother liquor from dairy industry and corn steep liquor from food industry have been used by some researchers as nutrient source for the ureolytic bacteria. Replacement of the conventional nutrients by natural ingredients can be a good alternative to make the process cost effective. Now, this particular work has been done very successfully by my research team. So what we have done, we haven't worked on waste products because actually I tried to work with dairy wastewater, but I could not get the quality of dairy. Quality is the dairy wastewater which I was expecting, and there were some problems. So I just didn't pursue that further. Then what we thought is that why cannot we replace the conventional nutrients, that is the beef or rather meat extract and peptone, by some natural ingredients which are rich in vitamins or which are rich in proteins, and that may reduce the cost of the process to a very high by a very high extent. And then we tried this see, this here in this table I have shown conventional nutrient medium. When we use peptone, in which protein source used is peptone, vitamin source used is meat extract, and carbon source is D-glucose. So what we did is that we tried to replace peptone by lentil seeds, you know, masoor dal. So lentil seeds powder. Then we tried to replace vitamin source that is conventional meat extract, which is very costly, by soya beans powder. And we replace D-glucose by table sugar, or rather that is nothing but sugar, common use sugar. Now, let me tell you that lentil seeds are around 50 times. Lentil seeds are around 50 times less expensive than peptone. Cost of soya beans is about 100 times lower than meat extract, and cost of sugar is approximately 10 times lesser than D-glucose. Now, we succeeded in getting very good results. That means we succeeded in growing the bacteria in these in this natural ingredient medium. It proved to be very comparable as conventional nutrient medium, and by that way we succeeded in reducing the cost of the process to a very high extent. Then there is one more problem or loophole in this process, that people till now have been using pure cultures of ureolytic bacteria. Now here again, you know, we cannot advise industries, or we cannot advise the construction sites. At construction sites, we cannot expect people to use pure cultures of ureolytic bacteria. For that, they will require, you know, they will have to procure the pure cultures, then the maintenance cost and their proper way of maintenance and all those things are involved, and subculturing and all those things. So that makes the process costly as well as impracticable. So again, in this regard, what we did, me and my research team, we used mixed microbial population from soil. Now the idea behind this was, we are using urea hydrolysis pathway, we are using ureolytic bacteria. These bacteria are very commonly found in soil, especially rhizospheric soil, that is a soil which is present near roots of plants. So we use rhizospheric soil as a source of mixed microbial population which contains ureolytic bacteria. Rhizosphere is a narrow region of soil or substrate that is directly influenced by root secretions, and associated soil microorganisms are known as the root microbiome. So the rhizospheric soil is nothing but the soil which is present near the roots of plants, and it is very rich in soil microorganisms, and that is soil bacteria especially. So we use the soil which is from the garden of our VNIT campus as a source of ureolytic bacteria. We didn't do any much processes to to isolate and use those bacteria. We just use the soil as such, and of course we decanted after the various processes. We didn't use the soil when we use that biocementing solution to cast the cement, concrete or mortar. That please don't get please don't be under that impression that soil is getting introduced in the concrete cubes, or no. We decanted we took the supernatant, we just took the bacteria which were there in the vigorously shaking the soil and keeping it standing for say 1 hour. Then we took the supernatant in which the bacteria were there. So now, and the pure cultures which are used by people are Sporosarcina pasturis. It is one of the most researched organism. Then people have used Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus cereus, Bacillus aureus, then even Bacillus megaterium are some of the organisms which are used by various researchers. But we, in our research, we have used rhizospheric soil as a source of mixed microbial population. So by clubbing this, that using this mixed microbial population and using these natural ingredient medium, we have succeeded in reducing the cost of MICCP to a very great extent. And once again, I tell that you can refer to my publications, and most of our work has been published by now. Now, why I am saying soil as a blessing for biocementation? As I told you that we have used rhizospheric soil as a source of bacteria. Ureolytic bacteria, mixed microbial culture we have used from that. So now see, our thought process was that yes, okay, we have succeeded in using natural ingredients and reducing the cost. But if we are extracting the microorganisms, bacteria, not extracting, we are not actually doing any extraction. If we are procuring the mixed microbial culture in which the ureolytic bacteria are there from the soil, that means the soil also contains all the nutrients which are necessary for this bacteria. Of course, soil is an excellent source of nutrients, especially rhizospheric soil. Because of the roots, deep-rooted roots in the soil, there are a number of microbial reactions occurring there. All the ecological ecosystems are functioning, the biogeochemical cycles are functioning. So obviously soil is an excellent source of nutrients. And in fact, the bacteria will be very happy if we provide the nutrient source or the soil nutrients to them. They will be very happy to get their home food. So growth of vegetation and the presence of ample amounts of microbes in rhizospheric soil are proof of its nutrient richness. So with this thought in our mind, then we proceeded for our further research. When once we had success in using mixed microbial population from soil, once we had success in using all natural ingredient medium, then we proceeded to pursue our research in using the soil extract as such as a nutrient source for the bacteria. So this case study I am going to present in front of you today. Soil extract, most novel replacement for conventional growth media. Studies on effectiveness of soil, studies on effectiveness of soil extract as a sole nutrient source. Sole means only nutrient source for bacterial growth. Coming to materials and methods, we of course use ordinary OPC 53 grade. We use locally available tap water. No distilled water, nothing was used in any of our processes, because there is no point in using distilled water and saying that now this is a biocementation process and we are advising, or rather suggesting, not advising, suggesting the industries to use it. No, that is not again practicable. So we use tap water, locally available natural river sand was used, and rhizospheric soil or garden soil was used. Now coming to preparation of soil extract nutrient source, how we did it. Approximately 1 kg of soil was taken per liter of water, of course tap water. Vigorous, and soil means rhizospheric soil, needless to say. Vigorous mechanical stirring was performed for about 20 minutes. This mechanical stirring we did on jar test apparatus at a medium speed. We can do it even manually. Then it was kept standstill for 2 hours to ensure enough leaching of nutrients from the soil in the water. Then the supernatant was separated from the soil by using fine strainer. This strained solution was then autoclaved at 15 psi pressure for 15 to 20 minutes. to make it free from any microbial mass. Now, why we did this? See, since we wanted to check and wanted to have 100% confirmation whether we can use soil extract as a sole nutrient source for the bacteria, we didn't want any here mixed microbial population interfering in our this piece of research. So after separating this supernatant in which leaching of the nutrients from the soil has occurred, we needed to autoclave it. What is autoclaving? Autoclaving is nothing but sterilization. That means destruction of all sorts of living organisms. So this sterilization is routinely done in microbiology labs or by microbiologists or by doctors in the hospitals when they sterilize their various instruments and even the syringes and etc. So it is it works on the concept of steam under pressure. So there is a steam in this autoclave under pressure 15 psi, which has a very high temperature of 121 degrees Celsius, and that way at this high temperature all the living organisms, microorganisms in this case, are killed. So the bacteria are killed. So that is autoclaving. So we did autoclaving as per the standard procedure, 15 psi pressure in the autoclave for 15 to 20 minutes to make it free from any microbial mass. Then about 20 ml, about 20 milliliters per liter of this supernatant, 20 ml per liter each of ureolytic bacterial cultures, Bacillus cereus and Enterobacter cloacae, maintained in nutrient broth medium in our laboratory, were then added to the autoclaved soil extract solution. Now, from where did we get these two bacterial cultures? See, in the our previous research work, when we succeeded in getting good results with the soil mixed microbial culture, we tried to isolate the ureolytic bacteria from these microbial cultures, and then we tried to identify these ureolytic bacteria, and we succeeded in identifying two ureolytic bacteria from these microbial mixed microbial cultures, Bacillus cereus and Enterobacter cloacae. These are isolated and identified in my own lab, my research team. So we are maintaining these cultures in my lab. So we have added these two 20 ml. These are maintained in nutrient broth medium, liquid medium. So 20 ml per liter each. That is, we made a mixture. 40 ml was added in the supernatant. Now our aim was to grow these two bacteria with in this supernatant, which is having nutrients which are leached out from the soil. Now, so what we did is that this solution was then incubated. This solution means the supernatant along with these bacteria, two cultures of bacteria, was then incubated for 24 to 48 hours at 37 degrees Celsius. Now, you know, this is why this is done. This incubation is done to provide optimum temperature for the bacteria, and the optimum temperature for ureolytic bacteria is 37 degrees Celsius. That is also we have proved, or we have I should use the word proved only in our laboratory by doing number of trial and error experiments. So by providing, it is a standard procedure in microbiology labs to keep the cultures in incubator at the optimum temperature so that we get optimum growth in a short period of 24 to 48 hours. Now next step was to, after removing these, this solution which was taken basically in a conical flask to keep in the incubator. These are the two cultures which we had added. Then after incubating, what we did is that we checked the optical density of this bacterial suspension or solution in spectrophotometer at 600 nm. You know, optical density of any bacterial suspension in spectrophotometer at 600 nm tells us about the growth of bacteria, and if it is above 0.6, then it indicates that the bacteria have grown well. And we had got optical density readings of about 0.8 to 0.9, which indicated that the bacteria were profusely growing using this soil extract as a sole nutrient source. Now urea as a substrate and gypsum as a calcium source. As I told you, urea is a substrate. On urea only the enzyme urease acts. We have seen the reactions. And gypsum, which is nothing but basically calcium sulfate. So gypsum as a calcium source were added in amounts 2 grams per liter, 2 grams per liter urea and 4.4 grams per liter gypsum respectively. Now, why these concentrations were decided? 2 grams per liter was again picked up from our previous studies in which we got 2 grams per liter as the optimum concentration of urea in biocementing experiments, and 4.5 grams for 2 grams was decided of, 4.4 grams of gypsum for 2 grams of urea was decided as per the stoichiometry of the chemical reactions involved. Now the resultant solution. Now what the solution contains? It contains these two bacteria having the nutrients as the soil extract, from the soil extract, and it is having now urea as a substrate, and it is also having calcium source, that is gypsum. So now this resultant solution or suspension was then used for preparation of mortar specimens. So as you can see, we have not used soil, we have decanted, we have taken the supernatant. So this was used for the preparation of mortar specimens. Now preparation of specimens, two types of mortar specimens were prepared, control and experimental. Control specimens were made by using tap water, and experimental specimens were made by using soil extract nutrient solution. So as I have told you earlier that we entirely replaced the water when we cast the experimental mortar specimens by soil extract nutrient solution, which we have prepared here, this one. So now standard mortar cubes of size, that's this standard size, were prepared and compacted on vibration machine. Control specimens were cast and cured in tap water. Curing of experimental specimens was performed in a solution containing tap water and 2 grams per liter of urea and 4.4 grams per liter of gypsum. And why we did this, why the curing was of experimental specimens was done specifically in curing solution, because we wanted to ensure that till the end of the curing period, that is 28 days, the bacteria were supplied with, or rather not the bacteria, as I told you that the bacteria are dead on the 7th day, till 6 days, 5 to 6 days only they are surviving. So we can say that the enzyme gets sufficient substrate and sufficient calcium source for the reactions to occur and for the biocementation to occur. Curing periods of 7, 14 and 28 days were maintained. Experiments were performed in triplicate, and in every set of experiment, 3 cubes were prepared. So the results which I am going to present in front of you, for each result, it is an average of 9 cubes. So now here compressive strength test results are in front of you. As you can see, control specimens and experimental specimens average is here. This is the average of 3 cubes. First set, second set 3 cubes average, third set 3 cubes average, and average of this is presented here. So as you can see that on the 7th day, the increase in compressive strength in percent, it was 16.31 of experimental as compared to control. On 14th day, the compressive strength was increased by 23.63% compressive strength of experimental as against the control. And on the 28th day, the compressive strength of experimental specimens was increased by 25.8% as compared to control. Coming to water absorption test. As you can see, the reduction in water absorption, percent reduction, 15.57 in experimental as compared to control on the 7th day. Percent reduction of water absorption of experimental cubes, that is biocemented cubes, was 19.85% on 14th day as against control cubes, and percent reduction of water absorption of experimental cubes was 22.92% on the 28th day as against control cubes. So as you can see that on the 28th day, the increment in compressive strength was 25.8%, almost 26%, and the reduction in water absorption was almost 23% in the biocemented specimens as compared to control specimens. So this is quite a remarkable number in increase of compressive strength as well as decrease in water absorption. So now to further prove that these results are due to deposition of calcium carbonate in the microvoids of the cementitious materials, we subjected control specimen of the 28-day curing period and experimental specimen to scanning electron microscopy analysis, SEM. These are the graphs, and you can clearly see in the experimental specimen, it is obviously there are crystals of calcium carbonate. Also, the experimental specimens were subjected to various durability tests like chloride analysis, sulfate analysis, then carbonate test, then RCPT, and it was to our extreme bliss that the experimental specimens in fact were better in terms of durability than control specimen. Now I am not presenting those results here because that will be too long a data to present. I am just telling you. You can, again I am saying that you can see my publications in which we have presented all the data. So now see, as you can see, I'll just go back to the previous slide that we have used this leached out nutrients which are there in the supernatant to grow these two types of urinary active bacteria. Incubation was done, optical density was checked, and then we were confirmed that bacteria were grown profusely. Then urea substrate and gypsum calcium source were added, and then this biocementing solution was used to prepare or to cast the experimental specimens, and the results are in front of you. So that means soil extract proved to be an excellent source of nutrients for bacterial growth. Isn't it? We didn't use any other nutrient. Then experimental specimens prepared by using bacteria grown in soil extract as nutrient sources showed around 26% increment in compressive strength and 23% reduction in water absorption. Use of soil extract as a source of nutrients for the growth of bacteria has a potential to impart cost effectiveness to the process of biocementation. Needless to say, it is so obvious because we don't have to buy anything here as a nutrient. And one more thing I would like to add here, that the soil which is remaining, we have extracted, we have strained the supernatant, as I have told you. So the soil which remains, we can again deposit back on the land from where we have taken it out. And that soil, in a due course of time, it will regain its nutrients, because that is nothing, that is a rhizospheric soil. So many biochemical, biogeochemical cycles are, reactions are occurring there through the various biogeochemical cycles. The plants are also, plant roots are also there, live plants are there. So the soil will regain its nutrients within a due course of time. So that means what? We are not even in this process exploiting any natural resource. That is, we are not exploiting soil, which is a very important natural resource, land or soil. So that means we can conclude that MICCP seems to be a promising technique for strengthening and even repairing the construction materials. Now let me tell you that for even crack healing we have tried. In the laboratory again, we have created artificial cracks with the help of a plate or in the concrete cubes in the curing stage itself, and or we have drilled, after curing of the concrete cubes, we have drilled a hole in the concrete cubes, the hole of known dimensions, and we have used this biocementing solution of the bacteria mixed microbial population as well as of watermelon seeds powder, and we got very good results of crack healing as well. But on-field validation is yet to be done. It is awaited, and the process I have now initiated. To make the process of MICCP completely efficient and cost effective, more vigorous research is needed to find replacements for expensive nutrients. Many researchers have already made use of various waste materials or natural ingredients as a nutrient source for the bacteria carrying out MICCP. In the present work, we have succeeded in using soil extract as a sole nutrient source for the bacteria, which drastically reduces cost of the biocementation process. More intense interdisciplinary collaborative work of civil engineers and biotechnologists in this direction would help to make MICCP technique more robust to assist in sustainable development. So with this concluding remarks, I conclude my today's talk. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. It was a very, very interesting presentation. And we would also request, we have received a fair amount of questions. And I would ask them one by one.
Yeah. Now let me check first. I have switched on the video. So still my video is not on for you people.
Possibly it could be due to bandwidth, madam. So we will leave it at that.
In due course of time, it will happen. Let us not focus. For me, on my screen, my computer screen, I can see myself, but I don't know why. Anyway, that is not an important issue. Let us start the discussion, or rather the interactions.
Yeah. To our audience as well, thank you for joining the session, and thanks for the questions which you have presented in chat box. For anyone who wants to ask Madhuvanti madam directly, Dr. Madhuvanti directly, he or she can actually raise their hands and we will unmute them so that they can phrase their questions in the right manner and ask to the speaker directly. So in the meantime, I'll just start with a few questions which we already received. How much time period is taken by microorganisms and enzymes to react or start the reaction? How long durable and basically how much time they do survive also in the solutions, whatever we means once we actually have the bacteria with us or the enzymes, how long they can be stored and how much additional time do they take for the reaction to happen, and how durable or how consistent would be their reaction. So that is a sort of question which we have received, madam. And then
okay, I got it. Let me tell you. See, the first question which I think is how can we maintain the bacteria in in our laboratory, or how can, so now see, my suggestion would be, you need, if you are working with the bacteria and you are a civil engineer, you need one microbiologist, or maybe I am a biochemist basically, but I have got some knowledge of microbiology, but you need a microbiologist basically. And maintaining the bacteria in the laboratory is not a very difficult task. Once you procure the culture, then you have to just prepare a culture nutrient medium, which is generally, if you procure the culture from that so wherever from you procure the culture from that institute, that organization, they will only suggest you the nutrient medium, or you can find it on in the previous literatures. Then once you procure the culture, you have to subculture it. Subculturing is a process in which we transfer the bacteria to new or rather fresh nutrient medium, because the bacteria are living in that nutrient medium, they are depleting the nutrients, they are eating, and as well as they are bacteria also excrete, they are living organisms, so their excretory products are also there through their cell membrane. So after a period of time, generally 15 days, what happens is that there is depletion of nutrients and there is accumulation of excretory products of bacteria. So due to that, toxicity is also created. So for that purpose, subculturing is done. So every microbiologist, or in any microbiology laboratory, every 15 days, or depending on the type of bacteria, generally every 15 days or maybe 3 weeks, we have to subculture. That is, go on transferring those bacteria into new nutrient medium prepared. Then you have to incubate it for the stipulated period of time as per the bacteria type of bacteria. Generally it is 24 to 48 hours. And after that, once you get a good growth of bacteria, you have to store the test tubes or Petri plates, whatever it is there. If the solid medium, then Petri plate. If the nutrient broth, then test tube in the refrigerator. Refrigerator means normal refrigerator, not freezer. And then, as I told you, you can use it anytime. Then the second, what was the second question? That how much time will it take for? No, I didn't understand the second question. Can the person who has, yeah, please tell me.
The question basically was that how long do they survive and how much time does it take for them to react?
Yeah, I told you that they will survive till till eternity, as long as you go on subculturing them, they will not die.
Oh.
And you can use them immediately. You have subcultured them, you have kept them in fridge. So whenever you need them, you just take out those test tubes, whatever stipulated amount you need for your procedure, you can use them. There is no need of any prior treatment to those bacteria. They are growing there. They are maintaining their whatever state of growth is there in the fridge, in the refrigerator. Anything else which I have skipped, I think, from this question, because it was a clubbed 2-3 questions together.
Okay, I'll just unmute one of our participants and allow him to ask the question. So
sure, that is better.
Mr. Prabhat, I have just unmuted.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you, Madhuvanti ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am. It's an interesting presentation, ma'am. I am also currently working in this area, ma'am, for my research work. Actually, I am going with the encapsulation procedure. The bacteria taking into encapsulation and mixing in concrete instead of fine aggregate.
And then activating them afterwards, right? Something like that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Once crack is being generated, I think the theoretical understanding is that it gets activated because of moisture and oxygen and precipitates the cancer. Ma'am, here I have seen the bacteria is directly added into the concrete, isn't it, ma'am, in this presentation? So when we directly add the bacteria into the fresh state of the concrete, there is a chance or possibility of the bacteria to get contaminated with other species. I think we will be very selective in choosing the organism which precipitates calcite while mixing into the concrete. So in this particular aspect, how we will avoid the contamination procedure, where in our civil engineering field, there is a lot of exposure to contaminants is there in practice.
I got your point. See, as I have told you, in our work, we have used mixed microbial culture. So where is the question of contamination? There are number of bacteria in that. We never see. I showed you in my today's case study. We have used the isolated and identified ureolytic bacteria, but that was just for academic purpose we identified. And in today's case study, like for using soil extract as nutrient source, we didn't use the soil mixed microbial culture because we wanted to get a clear-cut confirmation whether this bacteria can be grown on soil extract, and there should be no intermingling of the soil as a source of bacteria as well as source of nutrients. But we have always been using mixed microbial culture, and we have never used pure cultures of bacteria. And from the rhizospheric soil, if you are taking the bacteria, they are not. Yeah, one more point here, one question also. Again, I am now a little bit diverting, and I will again come back to your question. Who asked me that question? I don't remember the name. Okay. See, one more thing is that these ureolytic bacteria are not pathogenic. This is for all. I am just addressing everybody that sometimes even I come across this question that are they not dangerous? No, ureolytic bacteria are not pathogenic. That means they are not disease causing. Okay, coming back to your question that even if it gets contaminated, where is the question of any problem in the biocementing reaction? What do you think that when we are preparing concrete, they are preparing, concrete is getting prepared and cast and all. There are a number of bacteria there. They are not doing it under sterile conditions. They don't interfere in biocementing procedure. In our processes on, experiments only we have used mixed microbial culture. So there is no question of getting contaminated. Let it get contaminated. It doesn't interfere in your in the biocementing reaction, that is calcium carbonate precipitating reaction, which we are focusing on.
So,
hope I have cleared you.
Ma'am, so if there is contamination also when we use mixed cultures, there may be a kind of organism which is not calcite precipitating also can be there. So yeah. In that case, yes, ma'am.
So let it be.
Case, efficiency of healing may get reduced.
Sorry?
So in that case, efficiency of healing it can get reduced.
Why it will see healing, how it is, how bacteria is going down and getting precipitated, because calcium carbonate is getting, they are getting border or attached, or it's not a chemical attachment, but they are getting surrounded by calcium carbonate compound molecules. And calcium carbonate, it forms crystals, 3 types of crystals basically: calcite, aragonite and vaterite. Saying calcite precipitation reaction is wrong. There are 3 types of crystals, all of them are there, though calcite is in maximum amount or in major amount. So these bacteria only will act as precipitating nucleation sites, and they will get deposited in the pores of the microvoids of the cementitious materials. So presence of contaminant, the contaminating bacteria will not reduce the efficiency of healing the cracks or augmentation of the cementitious materials. That is what we have proved from our research. People, as I told you, that people are using pure cultures till now. I think we must be the first group of researchers all over the globally. I feel, I'm not sure. I take back my statement, but I don't know till this time people who have used mixed cultures. Mixed microbial culture. People have used pure cultures of bacteria. But in my opinion, there is no question of contamination by bacteria and retarding the process of biocementation because of that.
Yes, ma'am. Next. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for your question, madam. There's one more question: whether these bacteria they can be introduced directly into cement manufacturing so that it will aid the biocementation properties of this from manufacturing of cement itself. So can that be done?
No. See, right from manufacturing of cement, how can we do it? Cement is a powder when it is manufactured. I told you the concept of biocementation in one of my slides, that It is, I showed it, the pictorial representation that the, you know, the microvoids of the concrete or mortar cubes or even the cement cubes. We initially worked with cement cubes itself. But that is in the process when we add water, you know, and we prepare that mix, and that gets cured. So cement is just a dry powder. How can, even if we add bacteria, how can the calcium carbonate precipitation reaction will, I mean, I didn't understand the question itself. Basically, you should, whoever has asked the question should understand the concept of biocementation first. I hope I answered it clearly, or any other doubt?
Possibly he or she wanted to ask whether the materials, actually the bacteria, whether they can be living and when the cement is manufactured, and then the reaction can happen as and when water comes into contact with cement.
No. How can the bacteria be living, and how can you bind them to the cement molecules? No, yeah. that cannot happen. No.
Okay.
That is impossible. Yeah. Then one way is whatever this person, I mean Prabhat, I mean the previous one, yes, participant said that the encapsulation people are doing that also. That the encapsulated bacteria,
yes,
and yeah, that is also one way of doing it.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, one more small question.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So I have done direct addition using some named microorganism called Bacillus licheniformis, ma'am, during my ME thesis work. So what happened was I communicated to research journal. They asked me one question, sir. Without microorganism also there is precipitation of calcium carbonate inside the concrete over a period of due course of time. And Bacillus bacteria also precipitates the calcite, you are saying. So how can you differentiate the calcite which is present inside that naturally and which is precipitated by the bacteria into the concrete? So
yeah, okay, then again I got your point. Again, see, I have not presented my whole data here because that would have been too long. You can do EDX analysis, you can do EDX, and what FTR you can do. So FTR from EDX you can know that how much, how many, or rather what is the amount of calcium carbonate in control and what is the amount of concentration of calcium carbonate in experimental. It is very high. It is very obvious. We have done those analysis also. We have done EDX. Then one more I am forgetting. One more test we have done. So by that you can find out the, you know, amount of calcium carbonate which is present in experimental and amount of calcium carbonate which is present in control. So whatever is present, yeah, that is right. What the journal reviewer said is right, that some calcium carbonate, because you know calcium is there in the cementitious materials. So some calcium carbonate is going to be, gypsum is also there, gypsum is calcium sulfate. So it is going to be there, but it is very less in control, and that is not sufficient to fill up the void. So you can prove when you subject, even the SEM results, you know, I have subjected those graphs. Clearly a number of calcium carbonate crystals are very high in experimental. Similarly in ADX the peaks are very high of all the three types of calcite, aragonite and vaterite crystals, calcium carbonate crystals in experimental. So that way you can prove. You can subject your control and experimental specimens to this EDX and one more test which I am forgetting now.
No issue, madam.
We have conducted XRD, ma'am.
I would request Mr. Prabhat, actually we have a few more questions, so we can take these questions offline because we have limited time. So you may contact, we'll share the email ID of madam. You may contact her directly.
Yeah, please ask him to, mail. You can mail me and we will discuss. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll now unmute Mr. Sujit who has raised his hand some time back, and he can ask his question directly to madam. Yeah, over to you, Mr. Sujit.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Actually, it was nice presentation first. So many doubts I got clarified. Basically, I would like to ask you one thing, that this calcium carbonate precipitation by help of these bacteria, can we make it? Can they provide the cement or concrete a self-healing properties?
Self-healing property.
I'm talking because they are creating calcium. So because perhaps they will not, if I'm not wrong, because what I find that these bacteria are going to die after 6 days or 7 days, and in between that period they induced maximum calcium carbonation precipitations, and you know, in concrete and mortar, more or less. It creates shrinkage cracks because of this exothermic reaction and all.
Okay, so, I got your point. Just a minute, I got your point. I'll tell you. I didn't understand your question initially. So if you have seen my presentation today carefully, I showed that we got augmentation of mechanical strength of mortar. So we got some 26% increase in compressive strength and some 23 whatever percent decrease in, I think 23 or whatever decrease in water absorption. So why we are doing this? See, initially if we use this biocementing solution, when we cast the concrete or mortar, then it will be definitely surely a self-filling concrete or mortar. Self-filling in the sense, I don't know whether I should use this self-filling word, but the number of crack, I mean the crack formation will be reduced to a great extent if we in the initial stage itself use biocementation technique when we at the cast stage itself.
Ma'am, always that is not possible. See, ma'am, the parameter of what you have showed, that is the increasing of the strain, that is all because of this calcium carbonate precipitation and increasing the density of the concrete. That is the obvious thing. But how far it is suitable for the crack and for the self-filling, that was my question. Because if some in some cases,
I told you that even the durability test, you know, in the durability test, the experimental specimens were much better than the control ones. I didn't present the data here.
Maybe that is because of all the good density. But if
obviously
ma'am,
the crack formation will okay.
Just because we are discussing, so that's why I'm just clarifying my curiosity. That's all.
Yes.
For example, if there will be any crack development after say 20 days of curing, so what will be the result?
I didn't understand. After 20 days of curing, if there is any cracking,
we are curing the concrete for 28 days, right? And the bacteria dies after 6 days of curing. If there will be any crack development within the 5 days to 6 days, then definitely that will be sealed, that will be healed by help of these calcium precipitations. But if there will be any crack development after 20 days, is there any study you have?
28 days. After 28 days, you mean?
Let's say, okay, you can consider after 28 days or after 20 days or after 15 days, for example.
Yeah. I got your point. I told you now that we even studied the increase in compressive strength and decrease means these parameters for the concrete and mortar cubes for 45 days and for 90 days. And we observed that till the 90th day also, the compressive strength was increasing and water absorption was reducing, though not to a very high extent. Like suppose here 26% increase in compressive strength is there on the 20th day. On the 90th day, it will be 30% or maybe 32%. So that means the reactions are still occurring.
It means, ma'am, the calcium precipitations which are basically generated by these microorganisms, they help for this hydration process for the formation of this CSH gel.
Sorry to
This is my last question. This is my last question.
Yeah.
They help I don't think that they help the hydration process. They are just doing the function or the role of filling up the microvoids. That is what I clearly stated in my presentation.
Okay. They are not going to help the formation of CSH gel.
I don't think so.
Okay. But it was nice initiative. It is really nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Now there is one more hand which has been raised, so I'll just unmute him. Mr. Darshan, you may ask your question now. Yeah, Mr. Darshan, are you there?
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks a lot. This session is very nice and very informative. So my question is being that is there any environmental condition effect on the growing in the growth of this microbial? And one more question. Which kind of cracks it can be healed, like in the line in terms of this width and depth?
No, I didn't get the questions. What was the first question?
Like, ma'am, is there any environmental condition like atmospheric condition?
Yeah. Good question. And thanks for reminding me. I forgot to mention that we have even exposed, kept the biocemented concrete and mortar cubes in exposed environment behind my lab in the campus for 12 months, like for exposed to all the seasons. And we inspected the changes. There was no change. The biocemented experimental specimens were as it is, and then after checking the compressive strength, the compressive strength increase and everything was at par. Means that there is no, at least as checked in the laboratory, there are the environmental conditions. You know, the summer in Nagpur is very, I mean, a very strong summer. Heat is, it's very staunch heat, and then even rains are good. That year the rains were good, and even winter is that way very. I mean, the temperatures are quite low. So all the 3 seasons, the tubes were exposed, and they were successfully through all the tests. But I always say this, that field validation is always necessary. Just experimental success is never enough for any research study. So as applicable here also, that I am waiting for the field application studies. Yeah, and what was your second question?
Second question was, ma'am, is there any study on that depth, I mean, type of cracks has been healed, like depth of crack or width of crack?
We just did in the laboratory that we created an artificial crack with the help of a plate, and then while at that time of curing itself, means when it was not totally tough, and also on the first day itself, first or second day, and then we also created an artificial hole of different dimensions using a drill in the after 20th day of curing of the concrete cube, and we got good results in both cases. Now again the field validation studies are awaited. I will again say this only, that in the buildings where there are cracks, then this has to be tested. This needs to be tested.
Okay. Thank you, madam. Thank you, ma'am. Just take 2 last questions because we are just running out of time. There is one particular question asked by Mr. Shubham. He is asking whether whether we are adding this cultured bacteria as along with the water solution as the total water in concrete, or we are adding it to the normal or the mixing water to concrete. So how it is added? So it is added as
at the time when we cast the specimens, we are completely replacing water by this biocementing solution. Like control specimens, water is used. Here the complete replacement by this biocementing solution.
Okay. Thank you, madam. And there is one more question as to whether natural rainwater used for concreting can be considered as soil extract of bacteria. Will it serve the same purpose as biomineralization?
What? I didn't understand the question.
Somebody has asked a question that whether the natural rainwater can be considered to be containing bacteria, and can it be considered to be serving the same purpose as biomineralization?
No. Natural rainwater cannot have ureolytic bacteria. And then secondly, there is a chance of having acid, acid rains also. So you cannot use natural rainwater as a source of bacteria. Never. It will not contain ureolytic bacteria. I am talking about soil as a source of bacteria. Rainwater, how can it have ureolytic bacteria? Once it falls on the soil, then it's a different one. Then you can use it. Means, in other words, soil itself.
Okay. There is one last question, madam, which we've got. Does the pH of water affect the efficacy of these bacteria?
Yeah, it will affect, because you need a little bit higher pH. I have not shown you the pH ranges also, but I have told you that there is a pH shift. If you have listened to the presentation, that there is a pH shift when the ammonium ions and hydroxyl ions are formed, and at this higher pH, the carbonate equilibrium is shifted and carbonate ions are formed. So one should use normal, tap water which has a pH of around 7 to 8. If you try to use acidic water or very alkaline water, it will definitely affect, because you are working with live systems. So you cannot play with the pH parameters like that.
Okay. Thank you, madam. Thank you for giving us so much information on this topic, which is still in research. And we hope that this basically actually finds application in the field, so that lot of things which we typically associate with concrete, like shrinkage cracking or drying shrinkage cracking, particularly later on, or the durability parameters, they would sort of get help from this research. And I will just conclude on this session. We have also posted the email ID of madam in our chat box, and whomsoever has got any additional questions, they may mail Dr. Madhuvanti directly, and she should be able to help you in this regard. Now I'll hand over to my colleague, Engineer Sucheta, to take over and give vote of thanks for this excellent session. Thank you.
Thank you, Amit. First of all, I would take this opportunity to thank Dr. Madhuvanti Latkar, who is my alma mater also, so special emotional touch with ma'am. So thank you, ma'am, for accepting this invitation and giving your time and efforts to solve most of the questions. We have a lot of questions, and as Amit has said, we have shared your email ID, and participants can directly post in their questions to you. Thanks a lot for the excellent session, ma'am. And we will see in future also how we can organize more session on this similar topics. Thank you, ma'am. Then I will.
Thank you very much. I will be very happy if we interact in future also. And it was a very nicely organized webinar, and many thanks. And I mean, since I am your alma mater, I should appreciate you, Sucheta. And I hope is my video seen or still I'm invisible?
No, ma'am. We are still not able to see here.
Because I can see my video on my own screen, but you are not able to see me. Okay.
No, it might can as you said today it's raining heavily. So ma'am, before, and I would like to thank all the participants also for joining, and most of the participants joined before time and they've stayed back till like 1.5 hours. Thank you very much, and thank you for the interactive session. And I would also like to thank ICA Pune Center. And before closing, I would like to ask Mr. Ujjwal Kunte, who is chairman for ICA Pune Center, to speak a few words. Ujjwal sir, over to you, sir.
I'll just, okay.
Yes,
Dr. Madhuvan, thank you for accepting to give a lecture on your research work that you're doing. It was indeed an excellent presentation. So much, innovative work was involved. And we would definitely like to know more about this. We will have one more session as your research progresses further. And many of us would like to collaborate with you. If you need some field studies, we would be happy to provide help. As ICI Pune Center, we can provide you help. Please, connect with us if you need any field practical support for your research. Thank you very much,
ma'am. Thank you very much. Sure, thank you very much.
So thank you all the participants. Thank you, ma'am, once again. And we will be posting the video of this on our ICA Pune Center YouTube also, and we'll share it with the participant again, so that everybody can go through this presentation, because this topic is quite new and we will have to again revisit those things. So we'll be posting the link on YouTube, ICA YouTube channel, and a participant can go through that channel also. So thank you once again. So we are closing the session now. Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.